proposed that they be charged fees. Second, there are specific charges for pickups, vans, single-axle tow trailers, double-axle tow trailers, and one-ton dump trucks, and rack body trucks ranging from $10 a load for the smaller, $15 a load for the mid-size, and $20 per load for the one-ton dumps and the rack bodies, and that's for both wood waste and for brush and limbs. The asphalt, shingle, and sheetrock amounts are proposed to be $15 per load for a pickup, a van, or a single-axle tow trailer, $50 a load for a double-axle tow trailer, a one-ton dump truck which holds less than a double-axle tow trailer, $30 per load, and a rack body truck, $30 per load. No larger vehicles other than rack bodies or one-ton dump trucks would be allowed to utilize the site. Furthermore, the proposal has been amended so that commercial haulers would be treated in the same fashion as individuals who bring materials to the refuse disposal area for brush and limbs, wood waste, asphalt, shingles, and sheetrock. The limit for anyone who brings material, regardless of who they are, where they are, regardless of, as long as the material is from Cape Elizabeth, is the equivalent of 2 pickup truck loads per day. In addition to those items I mentioned, the white goods provision remains the same at $10 per item. Furniture, the very large items, sofa, mattresses, box springs, etc., $5 per item. Tires and batteries at no charge. The other portion that's a different change in recommendation from the last meeting, and as a result of comments, it is proposed that we keep in place a cleanup week with the same rules in place that were advertised in the Cape Courier dated October 1, 1994, are those rules that will be in effect for the cleanup week this fall. The attempt has been to, as I mentioned, to try to be as responsive as possible, to attempt to accommodate particularly the individual homeowner, and to recognize that while we are very limited in the amount of material we can take because of space limitations, that we will work as much as we can to try to accommodate some material. With that, I'll go for a second down here. And just wanted to refresh everyone's memory that we are under a state law passed by this last legislature that we close this site this year. What closure means is ceasing operations and also submitting a plan to the DEP that will actually close this back end of the transfer station site, or that area that is used for construction, wood waste, and other materials. On this plan, it's shown as the green line. The red line in the area is the old municipal solid waste or household trash area that used to be the town's open burning dump. That was closed in 1977 in accordance with Maine Department of Environmental regulations were in place at that time. If you look at this to give you a sense of where it is, I'll put my back to the council for a moment. This coming in here is the road. This is the circular area that you go around. The transfer station is here. The current recycling bins are here. This is the book recycling bin, and this is the bottle and can recycling area. What the DEP has asked as we close these facilities is that we not have any type of transfer operation or any type of active operation anywhere within the red lines and the green lines. In other words, that we wouldn't even, under today's rules, they wouldn't allow us to even have the transfer station in its current site, that wouldn't allow us to build this road in its current site. So what it really limits us to, unless the DEP is somewhat flexible, is working over in this area here. You want to try to have an area that's accessible and that's visible from the transfer station. That's really a driving force. The two driving forces behind all these policies are the fact that one, this area must be totally closed, and two, that we're not able to do any activity over this whole area. We have looked at, not in an extensive way, but some have said, well, why don't you look at other sites? Other sites would have to be licensed and permitted, and, you know, we would have to go through an extensive process to do that. We have signed an agreement with the City of Portland that all of our additional waste and all the additional waste beyond the limits that we have can be accommodated at the Riverton reclamation site operated by the City of Portland at the fees that are in place that are charged by the cities. That's an overview of where we now stand. I really would like to say two things in closing. One is really express my strong appreciation to Bob Malley for all the work that he has done on this whole endeavor. And two, I note there are a number of members of the Recycling Committee who are here this evening. And early on, they very much wanted to have a plan which encouraged recycling. And, you know, I believe that, you know, the other piece of this is the whole thrust of limiting does encourage folks to find alternative ways of using other materials so that they aren't disposed of, and society does find a better good for them. I better sit down. Thank you.
Thank you.
Better use.
Does anybody on the council have any comments? Good.
Mr. Chairman, one clarification. The manager has talked about we will propose that we continue cleanup week. Is that both in the spring and the fall?
That's correct.
Okay. I think that wasn't clear to me. Thank you.
Go ahead, Councilman O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think this revised plan does represent a resident-friendly compromise on this issue. We still, the EPA may not be totally enthralled with it, but I think it's worth going ahead with at this point. And if we have to do something different somewhere down the road, maybe we will. But there are some financial incentives for going ahead with it for the town. And I think it is important that although this doesn't do everything, as the town manager said, this doesn't do everything that the EPA has indicated they'd like to have, but it does go a considerable way towards that, and I think we ought to give it a shot.
Anybody else? Council Dalbert.
Yeah, I'm not too sure about financial incentives, but it certainly has some financial disincentives anyway. No, I would like to commend the manager and Bob Malley for what they've done. There are fees in here which nobody's going to agree with all of them, particularly those that affect them. I will undoubtedly begin to use my station wagon somewhat more than my pickup truck on occasion, and I think other people will think the same way. I do have one suggestion which I have communicated to the town manager related to a clarification in the ordinance, because it wasn't clear to me today, and it wasn't overly clear to the Director of Public Works today, as a matter of fact, when he and I had talked about it. And that relates to the no commercial hauler is allowed to utilize the refuse disposal area for domestic and non-domestic refuse. I think when people see all that, they jump to the conclusion that no refuse can go in by a commercial hauler. That was not the intent, and it needs some clarification.
Just so we don't have more unclearness, the domestic and non-domestic refuge is essentially defined as household trash. It's the odds and ends of trash, and we have never let commercial haulers bring those materials.
On page 2, the non-domestic refuse does not read that, so that reinforces what I...
But I was trying to simplify. What that does read, it's the office, all those odds and ends of materials that generally would one place in the transfer station.
Needs clarification.
Thank you, sir.
Anybody else? Council Coggeshall.
To get all my thoughts together, I had to write them down just to make sure while I was thinking that I covered them all. This issue is one of the most difficult that we as a council are going to have to face this year. The manager and Mr. Malley have spent years trying to ease the difficult transition, but the time has come to face the facts. We as a council need to think of the long-term needs and benefits to our citizens. We need to progress with the closure requirements based upon the good faith agreement with the DEP. Unnecessary haggling is going to cost us tax dollars because there will be less help from the closure funds. The changes presented tonight are temporary. I support the help which has been extended to the owners who run small, let me get this. I support the help which is being extended to the owners who run small Cape Elizabeth resident businesses. And the key word here is resident. Large commercial haulers should not be allowed to take away from the limited space that's available to our Cape Elizabeth taxpayers at the transfer station. I've heard statements that perhaps the new state administration will be less stringent in its requirements than the present one. But we have to realize that most of these requirements are from the federal government. We've been very fortunate through the hard work of Mr. McGovern and Mr. Malley to have the closing date extended from 2 years ago to this December. We're trying to obey the law, and we can, in the best interest of the town, we should stand behind these two professionals.
Thank you. Anybody else? Now I'll open it up to the public here, and the reason I've done it that way, you get an idea of what we've been doing, and if anybody's out there has got any comment, we've been working on this, and we're trying to come up with something that will be fair to everyone, but that is probably impossible, but we'll do the best we can. Anybody out there like to make a comment?
Mr. Chairman, this will be short and sweet. It's not a tirade like I pulled
Your
off
name,
last
please?
time. Jack Beaton, I'm sorry. And I just want to commend the group for at least getting the automobiles out of this thing. I do take some offense to what Mr. Delvick over here said. I'm not about to cut one branch up that I can throw in the back of my pickup into 16 pieces to put in the back of my little Jeep wagon, okay? And scratch it all up to get it to the dump. Either I'll throw it in the backyard and do something with it, or I'll have to wait until I get a great big pile and put it in my pickup and take it to the dump. That's okay. But I had mathematically figured out that if people in their automobiles were taking stuff to the dump, it cost them about $1,000 a ton. And with the size of my pickup with a cap on it, the amount of weight I can get in it's going to cost me $600 to $700 a ton. I say me, it's everybody, the time you put it in there. Now what all this revenue is going and where it's going, I haven't the slightest idea. But anyhow, I commend you for at least trying to make some changes. I just, for the life of me, cannot figure yet and will. And the DEP, I'm not going to try to understand, or the EPA. Nobody can. But if anybody can try to tell me for one moment that grinding up brush is contamination, they're going to have to go a long ways further than they've gone now. There's no such thing as contamination and grinding up brush. So how we ever figure it out, if we ever do or not, the only thing I say, and I quit right now, is we're losing as citizens in this town. I'm telling you right now. I don't know what the circumstances will be. Eventually, I couldn't tell you. I really don't know what it's going to be. But we're losing them. And I know you fought. I talked with Mike. He fought with the DEP. Maybe you have to continue to fight with them. I don't know. But everything is being taken away from us. I'm not blaming the town. I'm just giving you facts. It's being taken away from us. And somehow we're going to have to fight it. And we have to depend on folks like yourselves. You're all volunteers. Give you all the credit in the world. You're spending your time and your efforts trying to do the best you can for the citizens of Cape Elizabeth. But somehow, somewhere down the line, we're going to have to make some more progress. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jim?
Jim Murray, 144 Fowler Road. If Jack thinks he's got problems, he ought to be in the construction business, dealing with agencies. First of all, I'd like to commend, if Mike and Bob are responsible for the town dump, I'd like to commend them both, because I go way back when it was open 24 hours a day, and we used to go over there and shoot rats at night for entertainment. So I commend the both of them for the job that they have done, seriously. But being a local contractor, and I don't know whether I'm commercial or residential, I haven't figured that out yet. I guess there's a separation between the two, as you mentioned, Phyllis. Okay. I don't own a one-ton dump truck. I own a 7-yard dump truck, I own a 12-yard dump truck, and I own a 25-yard dump trailer. So I guess I have got to go buy a 1-ton dump truck if I've got to haul brush to the dump. Is that correct, Mike?
I'm not going to suggest what you need to buy. I'm not
No,
going
but
to
I
Suggest you load the big one up and go to Riverton.
Huh?
I said, I suggest you load the big one up and go to Riverton.
Well, I've been that route, Dick. And
sure.
I'd like to spend a minute with that on you, seeing as you brought it up. I was involved in a large demolition project here last month, and I called Bob and went the process of elimination with him to find out what I could do. And I called the city of Portland, and they want $70 a load for my small truck. They want $140 a load for my medium truck, and they want $250 a load for my 25-yard dump trailer. Okay? And in my opinion, all they're doing is laughing all the way to bank with our fees. And I don't understand, and I haven't figured out yet, why Cape's land is so sacred, and we can take the same material 7 miles north and take it into Portland. I don't know why we have got such sacred land out here that the DEP considers that we can't use that, but we can go to Portland and dump in Portland. I haven't been able to figure that out yet, but... So I'd just like to say that I agree with Jack. I don't know where it's going to end. We've got to provide something here for people. I was here some 25 years ago with the gravel pit ordinance. We can't extract gravel in town without a major process. We can't strip topsoil in town without a major process. We're taking a lot of sewerage out of town through the northern section. Now we're taking the trash out of town. Next, I guess someone's going to say we don't want the snow, so we've got to lug that out of town. I don't know where it's going to end. But certainly, we've got to take care of our own problems, people. And I think now is the time to start. And I'm sorry we have to lose the dump, but it's got to end somewhere. Just can't keep going and going and going. Thank you.
Okay? I think we can get a start sometime, but I'm afraid we're a few years too late. They've got the hooks in us. Anybody else?
I'm Mandy Garmy, and I'm the chairwoman of the Recycling Committee. And we're here really to support the notion of disposal fees. We think it makes a lot of sense from several standpoints. I'll share with you first a personal thought that I have as a homeowner. If I decide to remodel my bathroom, that's my own individual choice that I make, and I don't expect the town to absorb the costs of my decision for disposal fee. Likewise, if my neighbor decides to remodel 5 rooms, I don't want to absorb the silent cost of that through my tax dollars. So, to make it brief, I don't like the idea of paying money, but I really don't see what the alternative is if we are going to really help people focus on the decisions they make and really be accountable for those. That leads me into my role on the Recycling Committee, and the good news for Cape Elizabeth is that we've always been a leader in recycling in the state, and we continue to be. We really do an excellent job. The next focus, I think everyone agrees, is that we need to find better ways to conserve, to reduce, and to reuse items. And unless there are some constraints on us as individuals to do that, I don't think our thinking gets very creative. the idea of disposal fees really is a disincentive. It's a constraint on me, for example, as a homeowner. I really think twice about replacing versus reusing, composting versus hauling my leaves to the dump, breaking up my brush so that maybe it will compost naturally versus bringing it out to the transfer station, all kinds of issues like that, which I realize on a commercial scale are much, much larger. But I think that the individual homeowner in town needs to begin to address those issues, and then the burden on the commercial people won't be as, they won't perceive it all as their burden, because it is all of our costs that we're talking about. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Jerry Jackson, 25 Thrasher Road. I was up here at the last meeting, and one thing I wanted to address right off the bat is I don't think what we did at the last meeting, or what we continue to do, is unnecessary haggling. I think the discussion we had at the last meeting was pretty subtle compared to some area towns when they have an important subject like this. I think half the problem derives from the fact that a lot of plans are made and things are put in place without discussing them publicly beforehand, like the agreement that you have with Portland. I agree with Jimmy Murray. If any of you council people had ever driven to Riverside Street and traveled in that landfill, you'd understand for a couple of reasons why we wouldn't want to go over there. It's almost impossible to transverse that, even with a powerful four-wheel drive vehicle. As far as the user fees go, I think I said it at the last meeting, I'll say it again, most contractors in this town don't have a problem with a user fee. We pay in other towns, although one of the fees in here is a little higher. I'm not going to haggle over $10 here or there. We expect to pay user fees. I think from my perspective at the last meeting, one of the things you don't expect to do is go up there and have to spend an hour to an hour and a half unloading your truck or trailer, because it's not, the area is not conducive to a contractor hauling things in there, with the dumpsters being above grade as they still are. One of my questions to the council would be what the plans are for that. According to your map here, what you discussed at the last meeting, the green and red area, you're not able to put any dumpsters or anything on, so where are the dumpsters going to be? Where are we going to be able to haul this material? As far as the DEP telling you that you have to close that area of the dump, and we can't use that, I don't know who makes the rules for the DEP or the EPA, but it seems kind of ridiculous to me that if you have 30-yard dumpsters at a dump, and you're dumping roof shingles or sheetrock or metal goods, and just because the dumpsters are placed in the red area, how that's going to hurt the environment, it's absolutely ridiculous. I also concur with Jimmy about the fact that you can go to, I can think of a dozen towns within 25 miles of here where you can go to the dump, and while you're dumping, they have an enormous fire going, or they have, you know, things that they dump in the ground that you just can't believe. They don't do the job that they do in Cape Elizabeth to check to make sure that you're dumping hazardous waste or other things you're not supposed to be dumping in certain areas. They do a good job of that in this dump. But for you, Mike, and the council to tell me that they're closing all these area dumps, the word I get is that they have to maybe change their sites, but I don't know if any, the only area town in southern Maine that's closed their dump, won't allow commercial hauling, is Cumberland. Other than that, there's not a town around that I know of that doesn't allow commercial hauling. And I think a lot of the rules made by the DEP and the EPA are generated for large communities or suburban metropolitan areas like New York City and places like that. And when you try and compare Cape Elizabeth to towns like that or areas like that, it's not a comparison. So what I'd like to know tonight, one of my questions, as I'm sure a couple other contractors will discuss, is the limit to how many loads you can bring in. You might have a day where you're doing a lot of demolition on a house. You might have 2 or 3 trailer loads of material. you might not be in the dump again for a week or a week and a half. So the two-load limit, you know, I don't know. I have a tandem axle trailer that I use as a rolling dumpster. So I'd like to know where that puts me. I'd also like to know where they plan to locate these dumpsters and when they are going to put these things at grade or have a ramp up to them or something, so I don't have to work 10 hours a day and miss my kid's soccer game because I'm up the dump unloading my truck. It's been ridiculous for a year, and it's still ridiculous, and I'd like to get an idea of when that's going to happen.
Thank you. Do you have any comment?
Yeah, try to respond to a number of the questions. A couple of members of the Recycling Committee, Bob and I, recently interviewed engineering firms who are going to be working with the town to develop a new operations plan for the area that will include an amendment to our current transfer station license, as well as coming up with the dump closure plan. Part of that process will be, a very important part of it, is to work with the DEP to specifically locate an area within the refuse disposal land site that will be the transfer point for all the different materials we're talking about in the acceptance point. It has been our hope that the DEP might compromise somewhat on either side of the red line along the road. We indicated at the last meeting, had received some indication of a little bit of compromise. However, when we were interviewing the consultants, they had spoken to the DEP more recently, and the DEP supervisor, the person we have spoken to, has drawn a very strong line across our red line, and it is in essence saying we can't do anything in that area. So it's going to be a real challenge to work with them. The plan would be to try to get them to bend a little and to create a site that is very user-friendly in terms of unloading operations, in terms of signage, in terms of cleanliness. You know, very similar to the transfer station operation we have now, only not obviously to the extent, but obviously, you know, ways that people can unload cars very easily, and pickups and the other vehicles as well. Nothing like the current situation that you've voiced concern about in the past. Another comment you did make was about some of the other dumps, and it's my understanding that most of those other communities are going through the same process that we're going through. A number of us all plan to take material to the so-called Ross Grant site in Gorham. Regional Waste decided not to go ahead with that plan after the cost estimate was up over 20 million somewhere, I think 28 million. In order to develop a site that, you know, would have resulted in us going to Gorham with all sorts of fees. So, you know, if there are other towns that still have these sites open, they are slowly closing, except for a couple that are going to be licensed, i.e. Portland and Freeport as well has a licensed site with a liner and is able to accommodate some material.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Mike, what I don't understand is why, if we have a public works director and a town manager, and we have executives with the DEP, why do we need to hire a consultant? What's the reason for hiring a consultant? And are they open to coming to a public meeting and discussing with the citizens of this town? You know, why is a consultant and somebody from the DEP discussing where we can put 30-yard dumpsters on our site? I don't see what the big deal is. I mean, I'm all for the environment. I don't want people dumping hazardous toxic waste or anything else in the ground. I don't want to see, although I don't think burning wood is all that big a deal, but I don't just want an open rat pit like we had 25 years ago. But I don't understand why we have to have a consultant to do something that seems like it would be pretty easily rectified between the town government and officials in this town, the DEP. I mean, it seems like it's fairly simple. Maybe it's just too complex for me to understand, but you've got metal you're hauling there, you have brush, wood, and the things that we haul off in a dumpster. What is the big deal as far as the DEP is concerned?
Let me read a letter dated December 29th, 1993 from the DEP, which at that point indicated to us that there might be a little bit of leniency. I have discussed with Frank, and Frank is Frank Fiore, who's the state head of landfills. the town's desire to cease disposal and expand transfer and composting operations on top of the landfill, i.e. what we're talking about trying to do. We agree that any activities on top of the landfill must not compromise the cap. Designing a cap which will not be compromised by future activities on the site presents some engineering difficulties. Issues such as leachate generation, gas migration, settlement, geotechnical stability, maintenance, and runoff and erosion must be addressed. Therefore, significant cost and limitations on operations are associated with any proposal for continued use of the landfill area following closure. These cost and limitations should be fully evaluated compared to any possible alternatives. This letter was assuming we might be able to do something. As I said, subsequent to that, they said we can't do anything. But our hope is to be able to get something done, and I think that pretty clearly indicates that, Bob and I are not capable of engineering leachate generation, gas migration, settlement, and geotechnical work, and that is part of the scope of work that has been requested of Wright Pierce, the consultant, in addition to drawing up the engineering plans for the closure of the green area, which involves placing a cap and slopes and all that sort of thing, coming up with specs and engineering plans.
So if you're pretty, it's a pretty concrete idea that they're going to close this area, what have we got for other area in the town that you've looked at that we might have to open another dump?
I'm an optimistic sort of person, and I'm still very hopeful that as I look at that red line and at where it crosses the road, that in that area on either side of the red line, we might be able to come up with something. But that's why I've been, advocating very strongly throughout this whole issue, is that we've got to be very, very careful to control quantities. Because, if we accepted just anything, we don't, without limitation, we're not going to have the room to accomplish anything. We're going to effectively be totally tossed off this site. That's essentially the issue. And as far as looking at another area in town, the licensing of these things is extremely difficult. You can't do it within 250 feet of a property line. About the only potential area is the poor farm across the street. And, with that area has wetlands on it, it's got the marsh right next to it, and it's quite frankly also an area that's extremely valued by the citizens.
When you use that area as a dump before, the old type of dump where they burned it and buried it and backfilled over it, now you're talking about an area where you have wood there that they possibly, big power plants and places like that use wood, and they burn that, they chip it up and they can burn it. Paper mills or places like that. That's recycling. As far as the shingle goes, I know there's a paving company in Greater Portland area that's looking into, just got licensed, I believe, to grind up roof shingles to use in an asphalt process. They just haven't worked out the bugs in that yet. We're talking about putting stuff in containers on top of the ground. Things you allow to put in these containers now, metal, shingles, sheetrock, it's beyond me what they think is going to leach into the ground that's going to affect the ground. It's like the DEP and these environmentalists have so many rules and regulations that they're going to put everybody out of business. And it's, as much of an environmentalist as I am, it's borders on being ridiculous. But for the small contractors in this town, and I can speak for most of them, I don't think being so upset and annoyed at a problem like this is called, should be called hassling you people. We're just up here discussing an issue that's important to us. It's not like this is the first time we've discussed it with public officials. We've discussed it for months and months and months. So for some of the council people to come on to us at the last meeting like it was some big hassle that we were generating from our end, that's not what we're doing. I can appreciate people volunteering their time, but, if you have a problem, this is where we come.
Mr. Chair.
That's what we're here for. Yes. Councilor
I think
Coggeshall.
I need to clarify my use of the word haggling, because I was not talking about the citizens coming forward and making their comments, because we're always open to that and we welcome them, and when you don't, we really feel that we can't make the proper decision. My use of haggling in my statement was in haggling and dickering with the DEP, with the state government.
I was referring just specifically to
Using
you.
the word that I used,
Well,
so I just
that
want to make
was,
sure you
that
understand
comment
how
was
it's
directed at
used.
you, but there was other people on this council that were obviously just as annoyed that people like myself would come up here and accuse members of the members of the town of not being well-planned. I won't take back my words. I say to this day that for us as contractors to go up that dump and have to spend an hour or two to unload a truck, that's not a situation that's well-planned, especially when you've brought that to somebody's attention over and over and over again. And it's just beyond me that all these area towns around us can dump and burn, and, I mean, I take my hats off to Cape Elizabeth. You drive in our refuse area, I mean, you'd want to go up there and have a picnic. It's beautiful, but let's get real. I mean, we've got to have a place to get rid of our refuse, and I don't know too many contractors around that'll be upset at paying reasonable user fees, but to tell us just overnight in one meeting that you're going to close the doors to commercial haulers, if you can't understand, I'm a commercial hauler, but I'm a small commercial hauler. If you guys can't understand why we'd be upset about that, then you're living in the dark ages, because that was just cut and dry, boom, right overnight to us. And we've been asking every week, every month up the dump, what's going on. Then we find out that this proposal's going before the council, that they're going to close the dump. You're darn right we're upset. So we don't mind paying user fees, but we want to have a say in what's going on up there, too.
Okay, you all set?
I'm fine.
I mean, I think we took what was said at the last meeting
Yeah.
and went back into a workshop and tried to work out something that we hope would work, so I think we're listening to you. I know a lot of people don't think we are, but I think we are.
Yeah.
Okay?
Thank you.
Did you want to say something, Bill?
Yeah. I really sympathize with a lot of what Jim said and what Jerry said. It does seem to me, and I'm about as environmental as they get, I think, but it does seem to me ridiculous that some things that come from the ground, you can't put them back there. And as far as the DEP and the EPA, there's companies that dump dioxin into the river, and that's all right with them. And there's companies that use Velpar, and that's turning up in drinking water and in schools down east, and that's all right. That's not a problem. But when things like chip and bark, you can't do that unless you haul it away and that kind of thing. So I don't care for all of it. I really don't. And but I just feel that going any further than our suggestion, what we're proposing tonight, I don't think it's going to be a winning battle. And again, I think a lot of it, it just doesn't make sense. And I think that if people keep their waste in their own town, they'll think twice about creating some waste. And it does seem foolish to say it's okay to take something and dump it in some other community. But again, I just don't see that if we don't compromise like we're proposing to do, I think I'm afraid we'd just spin our wheels and we wouldn't get what we want.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Yes.
My name is Chris Simmons, and I own a small landscape company here in town. I guess I just got a couple of questions I need to ask. Under inert material, it says inert materials such as rock, dirt, sand, etc., is not accepted for commercial haulers. I suppose that I'd be a commercial hauler because I do it for pay, except by special permit. What constitutes a special permit is question number one, okay? If I'm redoing somebody's yard here in town and I'm putting in a new lawn and I'm taking away rocks and sand and stuff, and now if it has to be taken away, do I have to hire like Jim Murray to come in with his 25-yard trailer, fill that up, pay him to take it over to Portland, pay their fee at $250? Now this is all going to get passed on to you as the homeowner. Okay, but I want to know whether I have to do that or I can get a special permit, or where we as small contractors would stand in this situation.
Want it?
Yes, I'll answer that. The issue with inert fill is if you describe that you hired someone to go do it and, you know, it had to go over to Portland, I think the issue is just as Mrs. Garmy has stated. You know, the issue is the homeowner who's having the work done going to pay for that, or is the town going to pay for it? Because if we're not able to use it, then we are simply going to have to pay that cost as a town and all the rest of the taxpayers instead of the homeowner who is having that work done. The reason the language was chosen that the town would accept it with a special permit is that we would issue a special permit if we had identified a use of that, that it could be reused in some fashion other than being placed in the dump. And that's the reason for that language. If we can identify a use of that, either through, you know, putting it back into pavement or whatever, in an area and we have a place to temporarily stockpile it, we would issue a special permit. But if it's simply going to be a case of us taking it and absorbing the fee on all the taxpayers instead of the individual person who's receiving the benefit from that, we would not issue a special permit.
Okay, so the alternative is that to hire someone like Jim Murray and just haul it off and pay the fee, to have him haul it to Portland and pay Portland's dump fee.
Either that or find a way to reuse the material on the site. That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay? Anybody else? I guess everybody's satisfied. We'll close the public hearing part of it. Wasn't really an official public hearing, but it was a chance for the ones that was concerned to be able to have a few words, so we'll go back to the council. Council Dahlbach.
Mr. Chairman, first, I've heard some comments about how other towns are doing things in the local area. I can't speak for them. I do have some property in the mid-coast area up around Damascotta. We are about 1 year behind those towns as far as what we are doing right now. I would like to make a motion to move items 48 and 49, 48 being the amendments to the solid waste disposal ordinance, which should have some clarification as it relates to the one item I mentioned earlier, and 49, the new refuse disposal recycling regulations.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Council Cogshaw.
We are not free to act on 49 until we move it from the table. We've only taken 48 from the table. So I move that we take...
I always defer to the rules of order of Councilor Cogshaw.
So
We have a
withdraw your
motion on-
motion for
You can do anything.
Okay.
We have a motion on the floor.
He's withdrawing his motion.
Oh,
I withdraw the second.
okay.
So that I can move that we take item number 49 from the table.
Been moved and second. All in favor? Raise your hand. Those opposed? It's a vote. Now we go back to your,
Item 48.
You can do them both now.
Now you can do both.
You can do them both now.
You can move.
Make the same motion.
I will move the vote.
do I get a
I'll
second on it?
I'll second that.
Been moved and seconded. Any other comment? Viv looks confused over there, but that's okay.
That's all right. Going
It's
along
not
with-
unusual, Bill.
I'm going along with the tide.
I would just like to comment, I am going to vote for these, but I'm going to ask the question, and whether we need a legal mind to answer it or not, I don't know. Have we made enough changes in this ordinance to require another public hearing? What's your opinion, Mr. Manager?
My opinion is that first of all, you would need another public hearing if you had made the ordinance portion, item number 48, more onerous onto the citizen. That's usually the standard that is applied, and the town attorney is out there shaking his head, yes. And you didn't do that in this case. You made it less onerous. And as for the second item, the same thing would hold, but that is not an item that formally required a public hearing to begin with.
Thank you. Does everybody understand it?
Would like to make one comment, and that's in relation to Councilor Dalbeck's comment on clarification. It is my sense that about 6 months from now, we'll have a number of items that we need to come back with as we get into the operation. And what I'd like to do at that point, if this is approved this evening, is to come back with a full report to the council on how this is going. It also is somewhat dependent on how our negotiations with the DEP work out in getting an exact site, but that won't be forgotten and will be addressed.
There's one thing I hope is when you get into this, that you'll get a little lenient with the scavengers. That's recycling. Somebody else's trash is
You're going to
always...
roast scavengers.
Okay, everybody ready for the question? Yes, Council Coggeshall.
I want to explain my vote ahead of time. I'm not going to vote for this because I believe that large commercial haulers should not be allowed to continue to bring their materials to the transfer station.
Any
Say
other?
that again.
She said,
Large commercial haulers were restricted before, and we believe that we should allow the smaller, privately owned commercial people with a one-ton dump truck to come. But in our discussion, we opened it up so large dump trucks can come.
When?
I believe that was the intent the other night.
Mr. Chairman,
We have a limit to the amount per day.
could we have Mr. Malley explain, because I'm always so ignorant about all these truck sizes and things. I learned a few the other night, but there's one on here I'm unfamiliar with, is the rack body, and that may explain for both myself and Council Coggeshall how, if it's the larger operations. you have those-
My interpretation is that the rack body is essentially a one-ton dump truck with a rack body on it, instead of a dump body.
What's a rack body?
The rack body would have sides on it, high sides.
Oh, okay.
A wooden
I'm getting
platform
there.
body.
You're going to give us pictures sometime.
Sure.
Gee. So, an outfit like Lucas Tree, for instance, they generally do their chipping as they go along, from what I've seen with them, and would not be coming into the site. What about someone who's doing a major reconstruction job in a house? I've seen one recently on Shore Road, and they had dumpsters on site. And I assume they hauled those off to
Those would
Portland.
go directly to Portland.
Okay, so the way I was reading this, and, I agree with Council Cogswell from, what we said the other night, we were trying to put some criteria on this to make it less attractive for the larger firms to be coming into our facility rather than going over to Portland or wherever they go. And I think, now that I understand the rack body, that helps. I think we're accomplishing that pretty well. I do have a question to follow up on what the manager was explaining in his intro about a one-ton dump truck holds less than a double-axle tow trailer.
Right, a double-axle tow trailer can normally carry almost 2 ton of material, weight-wise, capacity. It basically goes on payload capacity,
Okay.
carrying weight.
Why aren't we proposing a higher fee for the double-axle tow trailer in all instances? Why are we just doing it for the shingles and sheet
Oh, the
rock?
shingles actually, it weighs more.
Okay, it goes on weight.
Right.
Hey, I'll catch on. All righty, good. And I think, for the public to be aware, when we workshopped this the other night, we were very much saying we need to keep a good dose of common sense. One question that was posed to me was, I'm one of the smaller contractors in town, I do yard work, I do a lot of weeding. If I see a couple of limbs that, branches that need to be removed, I'll remove those, I'll put them on top of the weeds. What are you going to do? What happens when I bring it in? Instances like that, we're going to use common sense. We're going to say if you bring in one limb now in your car, it doesn't matter anymore, but there will be common sense used, and I appreciate Mr. McGovern's explanation that we'll revisit this. It's like a lot of the work that we do, you've got to live with it. You can't predict it all ahead of time. We've done, I think, a fairly good job. We have responded to comments we received both at the public hearing last month and that we have received, individual councilors have received personally since then. I think we've responded well. I hear you taking everything away from us. At one point last month, we said no more pickup weeks. That's back in there. That's very important to a lot of our citizens. We are trying to respond. We're trying to walk the line between what is right for our citizens and what we're hearing, on the other hand, from the higher bureaucracies that are pounding on us. We've worked hard on this, and I'm going to support it. I think we've done a good job, and I appreciate your approach and your attitude and the common sense that we'll continue to use. Thanks.
Thank you. Council Coggeshall again.
So, Mr. Malley, are my concerns not sound about having larger trucks come in?
Right, the larger trucks would not be allowed in
Okay.
under this proposal.
All right.
It's just one thing I'd like to add as far as the cleanup pickup week there that we'll have, that if I understood you correctly the other night, it's one truckload.
That's correct.
You're not going to pick up 3 or 4 truckloads at somebody's house, okay? I think that should be pointed out loud and clear when we get into it. Yes, Councilor Nanell.
I just got a question, and I wonder if we, well, maybe this is a legal question, could we allow a larger rig to come into the dump if it were a concern that was owned by a resident, that was doing resident's business? That kind of thing, is that getting us into a bind as far as discrimination against other concerns?
Under this proposal, we're limiting anyone from coming in based on the size of the vehicle, regardless of, where they live, whether they're commercial or citizen. There is no discrimination except as to size of vehicle. Did I answer your question?
What I'm wondering is if we, can you do it any different for a resident concern without being legally charged with discriminating, is what I'm asking.
You could probably do it, yes. Then it again raises all the issues of where we're going to put the material.
Okay?
I got one question before
Councilor.
Bob gets away. Yeah, I was looking at this, and in the old Boy Scout days, why, we had a lot of one-wheel trailers that we hauled in the back of our cars for our equipment and so forth. Well, how are you going to treat that under this ordinance if I land up there with my car in a one-wheel trailer?
Sorry, I wasn't a Boy Scout, so I'm not qualified to answer that. I think we'd probably treat that as a single-axle trailer.
Okay.
Got one wheel, so it'd be single.
You used to haul that behind horses, didn't you?
No, it was behind the car.
Anybody else? Ready for the question?
Now, before we vote on that question,
Yeah,
let's make sure I've got it right. You've okayed 48?
No.
No, haven't okayed anything.
Haven't okayed anything yet.
We're starting from scratch.
Yeah,
Now, we're going to vote on 48 first and 49 second?
No, the motion is that we act on 48 and 49 together.
That's almost impossible for a vote. I'd have to vote no if you put
That's the
them
way
together.
your colleague made the motion, and it was
Okay.
seconded. Councilor Nell.
I got one more question, and I'll be quiet. Would there be any wisdom to, if, say somebody just happens to be, has a bigger rig, could we set it up in a way that they'd be limited, in other words, to so many yards a year, something like that? In other words, somebody has a one-ton truck, they can come in every day, that kind of thing. Could you limit, even if you have a 7-yard truck, could you be limited to 5 loads in a year, or something like that, or 10 loads? Is that still begging the question of where do you put it when that load comes in?
The policy as proposed reads that you're entitled to the equivalent of 2 pickup truck-sized loads per day. There's no provision for getting credits for the 364 days that you don't use it so that you could bring in huge trucks one day or anything like that. It's looked at on a daily basis. You bring in 1 load. If you bring in another, fine. If you bring in a third, not fine. If someone happens to bring it in on a bigger truck, that's one of those common sense things. It's, you look at the load, and if it's a very small load, as long as they're not over the 2 pickup truck loads per day, we're going to be reasonable about it. If someone wants to bring in a big tractor trailer for a couple of bricks, we're not going to treat it as though we're not going to accept it because it came in a big tractor trailer.
Thank you.
Okay? What we shall do is, I feel that it should be acted on individually. We'll act on item 48 first. Any comment? All in favor of item 48?
No, it's fine by me. I just wanted to get the road, the show on the road, which is why I put both of them, but I'm very happy to make a motion that just relates to item 48.
Second.
Everybody understand the motion? All in favor, raise your hand. Those opposed, it's a vote, 7-0. Item 49.
I'll make another motion that relates to item 49, and that we approve the proposed new refuse disposal recycling regulations.
Second.
Any questions? All those in favor, raise your hand. Those opposed, a vote, 7-0. Thank you. Item 51, which is tabled item from 9/12/94.
Mr. Chairman, I move we remove it from the table.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second.
All in favor? Raise your hand. Those opposed? It's a vote. Item 51, which is a table item, to consider the trustee of the Thomas Jordan Trust establishing regulations for the operation of the trust and any necessary action, and take any necessary action.
Mr. Chairman?
Council Cogshaw.
I have before you tonight the basic recommendations from the Implementation Committee report of July 1st, 1994, and that we workshopped on August 30th. Those policies and standards were presented after many weeks of discussion by the group. They deal with certain definitions of how the Thomas Jordan Trust is going to be run and the different criteria that will be used. There's a definition of residency. There's creation of a standard for eligibility, the types of programs that would be eligible, how the trust is to be administered, the statement of confidentiality, and how the investment of the trust would be, of the trust principle would be handled. It also, as a result of the work, we are in the process of applying to the IRS to determine exactly what the status of the trust is, and until we hear from that, that will have some influence on how the income is distributed. So therefore, I move that we as trustees of the Thomas Jordan Trust accept the policy and standards as presented.
Thank you.
Second.
Wait here, second. Any questions? I've just one comment to make. As I read B in the trust administration, is the manager shall have the authority to authorize individual grants up to $500 per household per year. So if one family come in, they could get one shot from the manager without going beyond. That's
That's the proposal.
a
correct.
proposal.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay? Is everybody ready for the question? All those in favor, raise your hand. Those opposed? It's a vote, 7-0.
One of the recommendations was that there be appointed a three-member committee of town councilors, trustees/trustees. When would that be done, and when will, it's not an item on the agenda,
That's the and take any necessary action.
and take any necessary action, so those three councilors are appointed, so they can meet and just start interviewing investment companies. Does the chairman want to tell the public who's on the committee?
I don't know myself. Given the Jordan name, I guess I'm supposed to be kept in the dark.
No, I think you're on the committee.
They're appointed by the,
Appointments
actually by
committee?
the chairman, but it's Mr. Linnell, Mr. Chappell, and myself, and they're staggered 3-year terms, and I guess we have,
That does not stagger, does it?
I thought it was going to be a staggered term.
Right.
Go ahead now. I know who gets off this coming year, and Bill and I are the only two people who happen to get off this coming year. So I'm saying that may not be that staggered. I'm just,
Oh, I'm talking
I haven't
about
tried to figure it out.
Three-member committee,
it's a 3-member committee.
right.
I think Irv would get off first because of his term runs out.
Okay, does it
Then
work?
followed by yours truly. I think I'd be on it for 2 years. Irv would be on it for 1, I'd be on it for 2, and Phyllis would be 3.
2.
Do we have to do this
My
tonight?
term coincides.
All right.
Do we have to do this?
We don't have to do that now.
I believe it should go to the appointments committee, and they come back with a recommendation item on the agenda at the next council meeting.
I'd suggest that's a good idea, considering the confusion on the floor at the moment.
Appointments Committee would be glad to look at it, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Thank
What about
you.
number 1?
Okay, item 58. To consider a proposed amendment to the Personnel Code and take any necessary action. Mr. Manager.
Yes, this item was on your agenda last month or the month before. You also discussed it at a workshop on Monday evening. You recommended a number of changes, particularly ones that related to poor drafting, to some confusion on the language as to bereavement and who got out when, in terms of, it doesn't sound good.
We'll get out one.
In terms of vacation, limiting, there had been a proposal to extend vacation for employees with service up over 20 years, and that was drawn back, so that proposed increase is eliminated. And I drafted a proposed change in the language in relation to accumulated vacation time that may or may not meet the expectation of the council as expressed Monday evening, based on discussion I had with councilors today.
There's one other area that I pointed out was, I don't feel, but you do, and you're the one that's going to handle it, is the time and a half deal after 40 hours. I don't think it's clear, or it hasn't been clear in the past. Anybody got any questions? Yes, Councilor Cogshaw.
As I recall our discussion at our workshop on the item of accumulated vacation time, I was under the impression that at the end of that discussion, that an employee would not be able to roll over a full amount of 1 year's vacation. At one time, we had talked about it being 50% of that vacation, or a suggestion was made of maybe 12 days, or 10 days would be actually 2 weeks. And we also had a discussion that vacation would not necessarily be authorized to be rolled over year after year, even though it's still only kept at that level, that you wouldn't be able to keep rolling over 2 weeks every year. So I think this perhaps should be expressed or written a little more clearly. I just sort of wonder what the consensus is of the council as a whole. Do you remember our discussing not allowing a full amount of vacation rolled over?
That is the way I understood it, yes. Anybody else got any comment?
If I might, I did some research today, and I looked at the administration department, excluding myself, everyone that works in the town hall, excluding myself, plus everyone that worked in Public Works, and I found an average of 60-something hours in Public Works, I don't have my note here, and about 71, I believe it was, in the town hall, which is both would be, in terms of hours, both under 2 weeks, and, this is getting pretty close to the end of the year. So, other than the one individual that we're all well aware of, myself, I'm not too sure how much of a problem what it is. If the council, does want to, amend the ordinance, or the draft, you could say something to the effect, at the end of each calendar year, an employee may carry over to the next year blank vacation days, period. And then, the extension beyond would be the proposed same language. Councilor Cogswell's comment on not being rolled over every year, a minimum base amount, that is an area that she and I do disagree on, and that is because of the way that the system works is, first of all, no one was able to take any vacation days during their first year of employment when they were hired, at least most of the employees who are currently in the system. So therefore, they automatically got a 2-week backward in arrears that more or less has always kept in place, and that's why when I read those average numbers, you can see it's very close to the 2. It's really difficult to get rid of that at this point. Plus, the way we accumulate vacation on a so many hours per week. For example, the beginning employees earn 1.84 vacation hours per week. It's just difficult to, suddenly in January to say you can't carry any over and you need to start from scratch, because we don't credit on the first day of the year or on their anniversary date so much vacation time. It's credited on every week as they work, they earn it, so that the town never gets in arrears by someone taking vacation before they've actually earned it. So that portion of it's difficult to do. The first portion, if the council wants to limit it, I say fine, but the latter portion, I'd want to have quite a bit more discussion on that, because it's administratively, it doesn't work within the framework we now have at all.
Councilor Dalbat.
Just to clarify what the manager said on that particular paragraph, if it were to say at the end of each calendar year, an employee can carry over to the next accumulated vacation time not to exceed 10 days, the employee, 10 days period. Any extension beyond this amount shall be approved, etc. Is that what you're talking about?
If that's the desire of the council to limit it, that's exactly the way you would want to do it, yes.
I think that would take care of my comfort level more.
Anybody else? I agree with that, Jane.
I think that reflects our discussion from Monday evening.
Well, I think we all felt that they earn the vacation the year, they should take it. They shouldn't skip it for a year or two, then take a month off. I just have one comment, and I'm going to bring it up again. I see according to this sheet, we have 2 Thanksgiving. We have Thanksgiving Day and Thanksgiving Friday. I only get 1 Thanksgiving Day for my turkey.
We're trying to promote turkeys.
Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
As
Moved and
amended.
seconded. Everybody understand the question?
I would like to raise
Yes.
one question. I know of an employee who suddenly was limited to 10 days, would have to take about 33 off. I assume the council will want the supervisor of each employee working with me to see that the transition happens in an appropriate way.
Yes, including having the chairman of the council handle your transition.
Thank you, sir.
Oh, jeez.
Thank you.
So that motion was as amended.
Yes.
Everybody understand the question? All those in favor, raise your hand. Those opposed? It's a vote, 7-0.
Who had seconded that, do you know?
What'd you say?
By the way, we should point out, since there are some folks in the audience here, that one of the things that I think all the members of the council are interested in is employees getting their time off and getting that chance to get away from the job and relax each year and not be carrying over unless there's some real good, valid reasons, which might be a trip or might be some other valid reason, but basically, vacations do have a purpose.
Thank you. Item 59, to consider a proposed lease purchase agreement for a replacement fire truck and take any necessary action. I believe, do you have this one, or the fire chief?
I'll have a brief introduction, and then I'll ask the fire chief to come forward. About a year ago, we recognized that we had a problem with the way we were replacing fire equipment. Particularly, I think it really came to the forefront when we had to fork out money for a ladder truck all at once. And the council at that point expressed some desire, can't you get these things onto a regular equipment replacement schedule? At that point in time, the fire chief gave it some thought and came to see me and presented a plan to the council whereby we would replace one of our larger pieces of fire equipment once every 5 years. And the way we would do that is by setting aside $35,000 approximately each year and putting it into a fire equipment replacement fund. Currently, that fund has $70,000 in it, and when the budget was proposed this year, for this fiscal year, back in the spring, it was proposed that in this particular year, because of the condition of Engine 1, that we go forward, replace Engine 1, using the $70,000 in the fund and leasing the balance with the payments to be made from the $35,000 each year that has been being set aside in the fund. This means we'd replace Engine 1 now and would look to replace an additional vehicle 5 years from now. As to the particulars of the vehicle, those type questions, I would defer to the fire chief.
Anybody got any comment? Any questions? You want to get him down front? You got something?
Oh, that's a good idea.
Chief McGoldrick, front and center.
I'll pass around the spec sheet of the truck that's the bid. Yeah, you see the back?
That's very
Council Cogshaw.
Oh, no, I don't, I thought he was going to explain why they chose this truck and what you've gone through the process of arranging this.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't hear your question.
Why did you choose this truck, and how did you
Okay,
come to that
okay.
decision?
Could you start that discussion going back to the alternative that was in the original capital improvement budget before the final budget was approved, which I think was sort of doing some work on what you currently had?
Okay, yes. Thank you for reminding me of that. We explored that possibility of doing some major work to Engine 1, and we had 3 refurbishing companies come in and take a look at the truck, and they said that for the amount of money that we'd have to put in to make it serviceable, it wasn't a good idea. They all suggested that we'd have to put close to $100,000 into that truck, and at that point there would be no guarantee on how long it would last from that point. And they all 3 recommended that that wasn't a wise decision to make. And in talking with the manager, we moved forward, and you have this proposal here before you this evening. Again, we went out for bids, and we received 5 bids. Of the 5 bids, 2 bids were acceptable in the price range, if you will, and we looked at the 2 bids that were within, well, they were actually within $600 of each other, and in looking at those 2 bids, it was determined that one of the bidders didn't meet our specifications, and that same bidder that did not meet the specifications also requested $72,000 and change 7 months before the delivery of the truck. What they wanted to do is they purchased a chassis from one company, and when they took delivery of the chassis, they wanted the town to pay for that chassis, and then they would put the body on it. And the other company that bid did not ask that upfront payment be made, and it doesn't make sense to me that we should pay $72,000 or $73,000 up front when that money can be gaining interest in our bank rather than theirs.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, Councilor McLaughlin.
Thank you. Chief McGoldrick, do you have any experience with this company that's been chosen? Any prior experience?
Yes, I do. As a matter of fact, one of the last pumpers, if not the last pumper that South Portland purchased, was purchased from this company, and they haven't had any problems with it.
You had satisfactory dealings with them throughout the course of the relationship?
Yes.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Yeah.
Councilor Dahlbeck?
Chief, does this particular company do the fabrication work itself, this company in Scarborough?
The truck itself, the chassis, let me go back to the beginning, if you will. The chassis of the four of the five companies that bid this truck, all were going to put a Spartan chassis underneath the body that was in the pump that was fabricated on the back. So we were really dealing with the same chassis. The chassis would be delivered to the company that was going to build the truck. In our particular case, we're looking at Ferrara, that's located in Louisiana, and they will be putting the pump on the truck, and they will be building the body on the truck. The local, when you're dealing with these major companies, they all have a local salesman. And in this particular case, the low bidder meeting specification was Anton Enterprises, that's located here in Scarborough.
I missaw that. Question for the town manager. What does this do to the capital improvement budget? Is it all within it?
It keeps it right on an even keel. If you look, the amount that we need to pay for the total is $166,000. There's $70,000 in the budget. We've proposed to set aside $105,000 over the next 3 years. That equals a total of $175,000, which is $9,000 less than the amount that will be needed for this truck.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Yes. Councilor Marvin?
You said you put out, there were 5 people who bid on it?
There were 5 that bid.
And was there only one person who really met your specifications? Was that why it...
No, the company that was the third highest bidder, that was about $12,000 over the low bid, met the complete specification as well. There was a minor variation in the low bidder that didn't meet specification. He did not put in for one thing, and the major thing is, he did not put in the pump that we requested. He put a cheaper pump in it, and thereby lowering his price. If he had put the same pump in it, the other one's head of his price would have been higher.
And so, had he done that, you would have felt comfortable with his bid too, and then you would have had 3 to choose from, and you just would have made it on the basis of low cost.
That's right.
Anybody else?
Chief, where's this being built?
Where is it being built?
Yeah.
Louisiana.
Well, I want to know, because last time I got accused of going to Texas to drive the ladder truck home. I want to know how far I'm going to have to go on this one.
Yeah, New Orleans.
Oh, that's mine. That's mine. I'm sorry.
My turn.
He's packed already.
I've been there, I don't want to go again.
Do you want him to answer that question? Do I hear a motion?
You have a motion.
We do have one.
Accept
Second.
the proposal as we
I
received it
didn't-
tonight.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor, raise your hand. Those opposed? So vote.
Mr. Chairman, could I say something?
Yes.
First of all, I'd like to thank you for your voting for the new piece of equipment, and I'd also like to recognize the fact that there's a great deal of Engine 1 members present, and when all of the contractors left the firemen, and so we'll probably be leaving now, but they all are sure I'm expressing their appreciation as well. I think you're all well aware of the fact that they spend a lot of their time providing fire suppression, fire prevention activities, and keeping the equipment up, and they surely appreciate what it is that you do. When you vote for this, it's a vote of confidence for them, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Item 60, to consider approving the warrant for the November 8, 1994 election and take necessary action. You have all the info, sir?
Yes, the town clerk has received the warrant for the big election in November. The polls will be open at Cape Elizabeth High School from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Absentee ballots are now available in the town office, should anyone like to come in and vote prior to the election.
I move we approve.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor, raise your hand. Those
No,
opposed?
you don't. Okay, fine.
You going to vote against that, Gene?
I was questioning it.
Item 61, to consider a recommendation from the Fort Williams Advisory Commission regarding fees for the picnic shelter and take any necessary action. I believe you all have a copy of a recommendation.
I move we approve.
Yes, Councilor Coggeshall.
I have a question to the manager. I have two different fee levels here. Which one are we really considering?
You're looking at the picnic shelter regulation sheet. If you'll note, what's confusing, if you read the first line of the next sheet, it indicates all reservation fees include a $25 security deposit. The difference between what you see from the Fort Committee and what you see on the picnic shelter regulation sheet is the fact that the numbers on the picnic shelter regulation sheet include the $25 security deposit.
Okay.
So what this does, according to the sheet, should I read it to you, is that residents that presently pay $45 go to $65, non-residents is now $60, goes to $75, businesses and catering events from $100 to $175 is the recommendation.
That's right.
I believe, no, non-residents go to 95, don't they?
Yeah, non-residents 95.
Oh, is that 95? Looks like a 7 to
I
me.
think it's a 9, Bill.
It's 9.
Yeah.
So they do not get back that $25?
They do get back to
Yeah.
25, so the amounts that Chairman Jordan just stated, they would get $25 back, provided they left the place in good shape.
And again, for clarification, on the current fee, and let's just take residents, the current fee is listed at 45.
Yes, it's now 20 plus a $25 security deposit.
Okay, and they get back the 25.
That's right.
All right, so it has gone up. Thank you.
I had trouble following it, too, when I was looking at it.
So moved.
I have one more question about it.
Yes, Council Marvin.
It said, when leaving the shelter, all litters to be placed in receptacles provided. Do we do that anymore?
No, we don't.
I
No.
didn't think so. So we might want to amend that.
I'll just cross that out.
Good point.
Actually, what I'll do is I'll reword something that says that there are no receptacles.
Right.
Yeah, that's in another policy that's usually attached to this one, but I'll see that this one is revised to reflect that as well.
Too many policies.
Right.
Any other questions? Ready for the question? All in favor, raise your hand. Those opposed? It's a vote. 7-0. Item 62, consider a proposed purchase for a lot U-37-93 and U-37-84 on Roundabout Lane for $25,000 and a donation of lots 94 to 104 beyond the end of Pine Ridge Road and take any necessary action. I believe you have a memo on that, sir.
Yes, this involves the transfer of 13 lots that are in Broad Cove, sort of off Broad Cove Road at the turn, as you're heading into Broad Cove, and it's land back there that then is over and back of Roundabout Lane and Pine Ridge Road. These were subdivided lots approved in one of the original subdivisions of Broad Cove. I've had a number of discussions with I. Allen Balfour, the owner of these properties, in the interests of him transferring them to the town. What has eventually evolved is a combination donation and payment of a total of $25,000 for all these lots. They are very wet lots. They are lots for which we would not grant a building permit. The town attorney, a representative from the town attorney's office is here later who later on this evening, we will ask you to go into an executive session on very similar type lots that we'll be discussing pending litigation on, that we've spent quite a bit of money on. There's a court case coming up with Mark Plummer that the town attorney's here just to update you on the town's defense on that case. And I raise that because one of the reasons that we're looking at these particular lots and taking the approach that we are is to avoid the type situation that we ended up in with the F.S. Plummer lots. in this case, one of my goals for the year was to find alternative dispute resolution, and I think this is an area that is a win-win for everyone around, but most of all for the citizens, because they're going to get some nice land that will be forever wild. I'm not to use Governor Baxter's term, but that will be a nice preserved and protected wetlands, and at the same time, they also avoid the potential of having litigation in the future. But I'm really pleased that Mr. Balfour was agreeable to working with us on this, and that I'm able to present you this offer at this time. I would recommend that you approve the purchase, accept the donation, and to authorize me to sign any documents prepared by the town attorney as may be needed to complete the transaction.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any comment? All those in favor, raise your hand. Those opposed, vote. Item 63. To consider a request from Councilor McLaughlin to amend the boards and commission ordinance and the zoning ordinance to change the associate members of the planning board and the zoning board to regular members. Councilor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, items number 63 and 64 go together. Now, if I may mention item 64, we can take separate action, certainly, but in my mind, they are certainly connected, and I want to revise a bit item 64, which is to consider a request from me to amend the statement of policy for appointments to boards and commissions to provide that planning board and zoning board of appeals members may serve 3 consecutive terms and take any necessary action.
Anybody got any comments, one way or the other? Yes, Councilor Marvin.
I think this is a fine idea. Right now, the situation is that many times the associate members are asked to step up to the plate. It's not like for 2 years you're an associate and then you can vote. It's sometimes you vote and sometimes you don't, and they seem to be in a constant state of limbo. So I think it's a fine idea. We don't have associate members of the council, and it seems odd to me that we would have them for other boards.
Anybody else? Councilor Cogswell.
Yes, I know that the recommendation before had come forth from the Appointments Committee that the associate members not be, that we no longer have associate members, and that they forward a recommendation for discussion by the Land Use Regulation Process Review Committee, which was made up of representatives from all the land use regulation boards and 2 counselors. And in discussing this with members of those boards present, the conclusion of this body was that we should retain our associate members, that if associate members are properly trained and participate in discussions and ask questions and do their homework, that they should be able to step up to the plate, so to speak, and vote that particular evening. If perhaps in the past we've had a problem where an associate member has been passed over for an appointment to a full-time position, then we should make that part of the requirement. But I'm not sure that we as a council have fully discussed the elimination of the associate member position. And that one of the recommendations also was that the Zoning Board and Conservation Commission, as well as the Planning Board, have their terms increased. I was wondering why that was not included in the proposal this evening.
Councilor McLaughlin.
I wanted to bring these 2 requests to the council in this time frame because the Appointments Committee will be meeting at the end of November with applicants for our boards and commissions. If we set this to public hearing for next month, at the time we conduct our interviews, we will be able to tell those applicants, hopefully one way or the other, if we're going to be continuing with the associate member level, and if we will be having 2 or 3 full terms for regular members of at least Planning Board and Zoning Board, which are the 2 that I've brought to the council. Rather than keep 2 full terms and say 2 4-year terms or something like that. I'm proposing, as did the, what was this, the LURP committee report, recommend 3 full terms. The way I have yeah. Under that proposal that came from the LURP committee, if we, and I'm just dealing with Planning Board and Zoning Board right now, if we increased the number of terms from 2 to 3, that would be 9 years. If you're an associate, you could be an associate for up to 7 years before you became a full member. You could be an associate for 7 years, then you could be a full member for 9 years. That's 16 years. We have in the audience one current planning board member. I don't think he planned to spend 16 years. There aren't many counselors who put in that number of years. I think what we've seen in the past is some burnout when we had 2 5-year terms for planning board members who had also been associate members, and it got to the point very few of them fulfilled their full second term. I fully support having 3 full terms so you can be on either of those boards for 9 years, but I don't think that doing that and keeping associate membership is going to serve the town well, because I don't think the people appointed into those positions will fulfill that. That's why I think the two need to go together, eliminating the associate members and increasing it to 3 full terms. And what I'm asking is, if there is a positive vote on this tonight, that we set it to public hearing next month, and because it is an ordinance change. So, as I said, we will be able to tell applicants at the end of November what we're appointing them to.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councilor Coggeshall.
Well, I just feel that we really need to think about the true purpose of having an associate member. A lot of the people who volunteer for some of these boards do not fully understand the scope, and or necessarily have the capability of being a good member. The 1-year associate term gives them a chance to try it out, so to speak, but also gives us a chance to try them out. And we're not locked into someone on a board for a full term who perhaps is not competent. In the past, we've had problems occasionally with a member of a board, and he's had to be spoken to by the manager or the town attorney, but it's very difficult to get them to leave a board because it can be very embarrassing for both parties. So I think that the position of associate does serve a purpose, and that we shouldn't overlook it.
Thank you.
The same person who's here this evening was also on the SLURP committee, and I don't know if that person wants to make a comment now or some other time.
I will try to get him up the mic once I get done with the council.
Mr. Chairman, if we do want to take positive action on this tonight, it needs to be referred to the planning board because it is an ordinance change. And I believe the planning board discussed that possibility in a recent workshop. Is that correct, Mr. Chairman? Would you please come up and tell us what the planning board has done with this? May I do that? I'm sorry.
You've already done it. Why ask me now?
Well, I was trying to move along.
Thank you.
For Irv's sake.
Good evening. Tom Emery, Chairman of the Planning Board. The debate or deliberation I've heard so far is consistent with that I've heard both at the LURP Committee and with the Planning Board. And it really depends upon who's sitting on the board when you ask the questions. At our workshop, having been contacted by Janet, we, at a workshop, had an informal discussion with respect to the issue of the benefits of being an associate member versus the tribulations of not being able to vote for a year, perhaps, with the exception that when other members are absent, the associate member is asked to become a voting member. For people who are not familiar with the planning process, who have not served on town boards, they expressed the appreciation for being able to use the associate member position as a training and learning exercise. One member expressed the appreciation, being a new resident of the town, of having that opportunity to not only get to learn the ways of the town and the characteristics of the community in terms of zoning, but also the politics and other issues related to land use planning. On the other hand, no one expressed a real desire to serve as a non-voting associate member for a long period of time. And the conclusion of the discussion was that perhaps the better of the two choices is to allow to have all voting members, and for those who feel either incompetent on a particular issue or uninformed, let's say, they can always elect to abstain from voting. And that was the decision.
Okay, thank you. Anybody got a comment? Tom? Yes, just a minute.
That seems very consistent with my thoughts, because if you were a one-year associate and you didn't vote at all for that 1 year, that would truly be a training period. But as it is now, your very first meeting, you can be asked to vote on something that you maybe don't know anything about. And so it would make a lot more sense to me to say at the outset, you may be asked to vote on something you don't know anything about. Feel free not to vote on this, because we know this is your first year and so forth, and that's okay. And I think that people would feel a lot more comfortable knowing that at the outset.
I have one question to you. Did you have something?
After you.
When you have a 5-member board and you have to have 3 members there to officially have a meeting, is that correct?
I believe so, that's correct.
So you have 2 alternates, possibility to fill in to make the 3. So if you go to a 7-member board, you're going to need 4?
4.
So you don't, if you have 3 that's absent or 4 that's absent, which can happen, but it's highly unlikely, I would say. You don't have nobody you can grab.
No, the typical situation is that we usually have reasonably full attendance throughout the year. It's the conflict of interest that provides the situation where members aren't able to vote more often than people being absent. In either case, we still would have the opportunity to draw from 7 members, whether they're associate or full voting members.
Thank you, but you still got to have more numbers there officially with 7 than you do with 5. Okay. Councilor Cogswell, you have a question to it?
I guess I feel a little concerned about the fact that someone who might not feel competent to vote would not be voting and abstaining from voting. I think that you should not go to a meeting unless you feel prepared, and if you have questions, to ask them of the appropriate people ahead of time. And I just think that's not part of the responsibility of being a board member. So to say that, well, if it's their first meeting, whether they're a full member or an associate member, that they can abstain from voting is not a good way to handle the situation.
There may be a situation where that might arise. Typically, that isn't the situation of the board. The board generally comes as fully prepared as possible, having reviewed the packet. I can understand a situation, for instance, my first evening, even though I have a background in planning and land use, the first item on the agenda was an item that had been deliberated for 6 months in subcommittee, and I had a very short period of time to get up to speed with it and wasn't aware of the ways of the board, and I brought up about 20 items that I thought was wrong with this ordinance adoption, and I was immediately told by the chairman that if I had those many concerns, I should bring them up to the council when it goes to public hearing, that everything had been previously discussed. And that was a legitimate claim, because I was being very, very picky about those items. So regardless of one's experience, there is an opportunity, or there is a possible occasion early on in one's membership where one may not be fully up to speed, even though one has fully reviewed the materials.
Where if you were an associate, the possibility of your voting is less than if you were a full member.
That's correct.
Okay, any other comment? Councilor Nell.
Yeah, I just have a little analogy. I was talking to one of my former soccer players the other day, and she explained that when she got to college, because of a technicality in the way they computed her grade, she wasn't eligible to play. A few weeks into the season, the starting goalie got hurt, and the college came knocking on her door and said, "We'd like to have you play for 2 games." And so I see that I think it's better manners for the people that show up to these meetings, that if for convenience, if they can vote for the board's convenience, and if they're there and they're putting in their time, I think we could let them vote and be members, and if they are immersed immediately, it seems to me there's an incentive for them to come up to speed very quickly, too. Whereas if they're associate members for a year or 2 years, they may burn out before they may decide not to keep going, but they don't have the incentive to come quickly up to speed. So I'm in favor of it.
Council Coggeshall.
Are we also including the Conservation Commission in the increasing the number of terms from 2 to 3 consecutive terms? That was the LURP recommendation.
I was not including that at this time.
Is there a reason? Since that committee expressed an interest in being able to stay on longer, they've lost a lot of talented people for that reason.
I was not following to the letter every recommendation made by the LURP committee.
Would you bring that up later?
Conservation Commission.
Anybody else? Anybody else? No, I would just like to say, because I'm too old-fashioned and still young enough to see the difference, but I feel associate member can be active if he wants to be, and I don't think he's held back. If he wants to get involved in the discussion, I think his comments and discussion would be adhered to or listened to, even though he was still associate member, or he just wasn't able to vote on it. So I'm going to vote that we leave it the way it is. Anybody else? Anybody want to make a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we refer to the Planning Board revisions to the Boards and Commissions ordinance, which would change the associate members of the Planning Board and the Zoning Board to regular members, and that we receive back from the Planning Board their report in time, their recommendation in time, so that we can set this to public hearing at the November 14th Town Council meeting in council chambers.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Everybody understand the question?
May I ask a question?
Yes, go ahead.
I know that ordinance language gets sent to the planning board. Do you want the planning board deliberating on the benefits of a zoning board having 7 active members?
It's part of the zoning
Yes.
ordinance.
Part of the zoning ordinance.
About to have to.
Yeah.
Okay? All in favor of the motion? All opposed? 5 to 2, the motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to move that after the public hearing held on item 63, that the council will take act, that the council consider amending the statement of policy for appointments to boards and commissions to provide that planning board members and zoning board of appeals members may serve 3 consecutive 3-year terms.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Could I have some clarification? I thought we just referred item 63 to the planning board. Now what are we doing?
Item 63 was to eliminate the designation of associate members.
Right.
Yeah, because that's in the ordinance, it has to be referred
Oh,
to.
now you're just going to do item 64?
4.
Item 64 is what I
Thank you.
more recently said.
Anybody got any comment? Ready for the question? All those in favor? Those opposed?
I thank the council. 7-0. Yep. Thank you, Mr. Emery.
Item 65, to consider entering into executive session to review a request for hardship abatement and take any necessary action.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we enter into executive session and review the request for hardship abatements and any other action.
And the second piece is to receive an update from the town attorney on pending litigation in the matter of FS Plummer versus the town of Cape Elizabeth.
Do you add that
Falls
to the
under
motion?
any necessary.
Do I hear a second?
second.
All those in favor? Those opposed? It's a vote.
Mr. Chairman, do we need to take an item out of order?
I don't know, do
The
we?
citizens' discussion of items not on the agenda.
I didn't see any citizen out there, that's why I didn't mention it.
Well, it was on the...
I see a gentleman out there, but I didn't realize he was
Not
a
a
citizen.
Not a citizen?
You all set, or you have something else?
Are we expecting to come back into regular session to
No.
take any action?
I say no, I don't
Is that-
ask the TV people and what have you to wait around.
Television
Yeah.
people may go home in the evening. Good night, one and all.
Okay, we'll move to the cafeteria? Or the other?
Cafeteria, I think, is cooler, I hope.
About an hour and a quarter longer than I figured it might be, but no, when I went over.